From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Coming up today, K-State's Dan O'Brien will preview this morning's USDA crop production and grain supply and demand reports, and he'll comment on the better-than-expected new numbers on soybean exports during Dan's weekly stint on the grain market trends. Then K-State's Robin Reid will talk about a new publication from K-State, Kansas Agricultural Land Values and Trends. This an extensive summary on land values at the state, regional, and county levels based on actual farm and ranch land sales in the state. It's an exceptional resource, and Robin will tell us all about it. And later on Kansas Agricultural Weather, K-State's Mary Knapp. All that and more coming your way next on Agriculture Today.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Welcome to another Agriculture Today. Once more, in less than an hour, the USDA will serve up its first summer crop estimate of the season based on actual surveys. The grain supply and demand numbers for this month as well. Naturally, we'll take that up as one of our topics as we speak once again with grain market economist Dan O'Brien of K-State Research and Extension, his weekly segment on the grain market trends. So, Dan, the trade obviously is quite interested in what the USDA has to say, and it would be primarily in the area of row crop production, wouldn't it?
Yes, we have had numbers that have come out on wheat production issues. Of course, we're watching to see what happens up in the Dakotas with the spring wheat crop, Dakota, Minnesota, Montana. But primary market movers will be the supply-demand balance sheets, I think. Well, the production numbers and the supply-demand balance sheets that come out of this August 10th report. And as you said, Eric, it'll be the first survey-based, in-field, actual observation, founded estimate of what the size of the 2018 corn, soybean, and grain sorghum crops will be here in the U.S. And I don't know that we can say that we're completely going to hang our hat on this first set of numbers. Again, they will represent people's observations of what was in the field as of the August 1st time frame. And you look at weather maps, particularly some of the satellite images now made available, sourced out of NASA, reported through Weather Service means. And these aren't small, dry areas for either surface or root zone soil moisture deficits in the Missouri and also southern Iowa and central to northern Illinois that we're dealing with. So big issues afoot, dry areas down the Texas Panhandle, some up into the Dakotas. And again, I guess after last year's experience of seeing all manner of signals that, gosh, we were going to have major problems in a lot of the U.S. and then seeing yields come through like they did, I think people are pretty hesitant to think anything negative about yield prospects, which means if yield prospects do deteriorate later on because of weather conditions weather and or soil moisture issues in some of these areas, we're probably more likely to be surprised now than we were just a year or two ago, just because we, quote, don't want to get caught short on our market guesses.
So this will be a tone setter for subsequent row crop production numbers to come from the USDA. But again, on world grain supply and demand, what is the trade looking for there? More issues in South America? What?
Yeah, from a foreign shores point of view, they'll be looking to see what the size of the Argentine and Brazilian soybean and corn crops are. In the July report, they projected 119.5 million metric tons in terms of the soybean crop in Brazil for this 2018 calendar year. And that would be up just about 5 million metric tons from last year, up about 23, 24 from the previous couple of years, and even more from thereafter. So with all the supplies we have coming up from Brazil and with record crops from the U.S., it's a wonder, actually, that soybeans have held up as well as they have, even with all the trade tensions and tariffs, et cetera. You just see strong production in the world, and again, we're, quote, hanging our hat on usage to not actually have seen us drop down to areas that we are not that unfamiliar with in the past, something with a 7 or a 6 in front of it. So we're not there, and it's probably something we should be thankful for.
The USDA pair of reports coming out within the hour at 11 o'clock, as Dan said, but the bullishness that remains in the soybean and soy meal export markets, why it's running counter to what a lot of folks thought might develop in the wake of the Chinese tariff flap.
The broader idea or narrative in the market is that tariffs would do great damage to U.S. soybean exports, and because of that slammed door for U.S. export sales to China would bring catastrophic price responses to the low side and lead us to a drying up of exports. If you look at the most recent numbers, that hasn't happened. In fact, if you look at actual shipments for the week ending August the 2nd, they were coming in at about 37 million bushels. And that's up about from 5, 6, 7 million bushels from where it had been the last several weeks, and we were hanging around at 30. Well, here we have the most recent week, we've jumped up to 37, need about 31 for the USDA projections to actually not be changed as we head off, which we'd probably could see in the September WASDE report. So we've seen some strength, and there's the question of, gosh, well, where's it coming from? Well, when you look at where shipments and outstanding sales have been coming from, you see places like Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Mexico, Japan, Taiwan, all still holding up. What's a surprise when you dig behind the numbers is that even for this old crop marketing year, there are still some quantity of soybeans, and not insignificant, that are meant for China, even yet. And looking out off into next year, you see quasi-recovery plans. So those companies, apparently somebody over there is purchasing ahead into the next marketing year. Maybe they're just getting their, quote, option in place to perhaps be able to go forth, but there are at least some folks hedging their bets and or thinking that some of these trade issues will be resolved before they head off into next year. Of course, for these purchases, they can back out of them too, so it wouldn't be at all a surprise that people that will need soybeans have gone ahead, made their purchases, and then if they get to the point where nothing is resolved, well, then they just undo them. But anyway, looking forward, there are still purchases from a China origin out into the future for the remainder of this old crop marketing year, and this ends August 31st, and a fair amount off into the next one. So we'll see where it all goes, but it's interesting to watch what's happening underneath the surface. And key point, I guess, is that when you look at the pace of exports, it seems that we're on cue to meet the USDA's projection. And actually, for some other crops, particularly the feed grains, corn and grain sorghum, we'll probably have to see the export numbers adjusted a little bit lower to get to the end of this marketing year, and the old crop stocks adjusted to the higher side. Of course, right now we're paying attention more to new crop supply, demand issues, but some changes probably in the offing for old crop corn and grain sorghum here in the U.S. just because of a little bit lower exports than the USDA had projected.
And once more, the shining star in the trades, to put it that way, the wheat market. And you've been keeping an eye on basis trends in Kansas and finding that there are certain pockets in the state where that basis is doing quite well vis-a-vis the rest of Kansas.
Well, yes. The strongest area of the state, it seems, for wheat bids is down in the south central area. And you look at what's reported by the USDA for Central Kansas Terminal Processor daily bids. We're looking at the Ark City, Wellington, Wichita area as being as strong or stronger than any place. Great Bend has a pretty strong bid, Salina. So really up and down that south central part of Kansas, you've got a fair amount of strength. Bids out into the west, the best bids out there rival some of the lower end of the bids in the central part of the state, but you're not seeing a catastrophic situation to the west. It probably has something to do with protein content, et cetera. But again, Dodge City about 20 under, the SEP contract, Garden City 20 to 30 under, as good as about anything that you'll see in the West. But here you're at even money to 2 to 7 over September, often those strongest south central Kansas locations. So in past years, we've talked about problems in our markets that led to wide basis challenges. Well, here I guess we found the solution for wide basis, have a short crop and good protein in the wheat market. And even in the face of what can only best be described as anemic exports to date, we still have pretty good basis bids.
Begging the question, how much steam is left in the wheat market as far as the trend upward in prices?
It is a tale of two factors. The supply concerns internationally are certainly out there, and on a daily basis we see news reports of drier yet conditions in Europe affecting their crop and usage and export prospects. Damage earlier on in the Black Sea region, not so much right now apparently, but earlier on some damage to their crop, a part of Australia being damaged. So there are supply worries around the globe. On the usage side, we just haven't seen buyers come to the U.S. yet, and at least on what's recorded, we don't see forward shipments really coming in and aggressively showing themselves. Maybe some moderate strength in U.S. all wheat exports, but for hard red winter wheat, just not much, So we're no doubt paying attention to the supply prospects with the idea that people will have that, gosh, if supplies are short, folks will have to come to the U.S. eventually. And I think that is very, very true. The point is that apparently the buyers haven't got to that stage of desperateness yet where they come in mass to the U.S. as a supplier of last resort for world wheat and really start to be aggressive.
Dan, you will be presenting information like this and more as part of your overall grain market outlook at the Risk and Profit Conference. We'll see you here in Manhattan next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
That's grain market economist Dan O'Brien, K-State Research and Extension, along with us from his office in Colby, northwest Kansas. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
We are back now on the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. And next up for you, we'll feature a newly launched resource for just about anybody involved in agriculture in Kansas. And it'll be of high value as we consider what land is worth across this state. It's the Kansas Agricultural Land Values and Trends publication out from the Agricultural Economics Department here at K-State. One of those responsible for organizing it is with us now, an extension associate in agricultural economics, Robin Reid. So, Robin, the aim of this effort, and quite an effort it is, for there is a ton of information here.
Yes, so this is actually a 57-page publication that was just published this week. And it's a joint venture between our department at Agricultural Economics here at K-State and the Kansas Society of Professional Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers. The goal of this is just to get more information out there on Kansas land values and trends that we're seeing across the state. As I know, like you mentioned, this is something that everyone involved in agriculture is watching, especially now with the downturn in the farm economy.
There has been information on land values out there before, but this is more comprehensive of a resource than we've seen.
Absolutely. So what we've put out in the past is kind of an average number for crop ground, pasture land in each county across the state. I went into a lot more detail and looked at, we have 5 years of data from the Property Valuation Department now. I looked at regional trends, county trends if there were enough sales, and just looked at more detail than just one average per county, and just tried to get a lot more information in a publication to help our producers out there.
It's worth stressing this is based on actual sales now through the state's information.
Yes. So what I did, I took all the parcels that were sold in Kansas from 2013 to 2017 and narrowed it down to the agricultural-based parcels as best as I could. And that means we're only looking at parcels 70 acres in size or larger. And any improvements, buildings, houses, anything like that is removed from the value of that property. Now, the challenge in doing that is most parcels that are sold are not just non-irrigated crop ground or irrigated crop ground or pasture. So in order to classify them as that, the parcels that were 70% or more, let's take non-irrigated crop ground, they had to be at least 70% non-irrigated crop ground to be classified as that. Now, that means another 30% could also be pasture, waterways, irrigated crop ground. So there's some difficulties in doing this, but as you go throughout the publication, just keep in mind that's how it is classified. We did combine pasture and hay into one category. So basically, the three categories we're looking at is non-irrigated crop ground, pasture, hay, and irrigated crop ground.
It's so thorough here in that it really breaks down the numbers not only by state trends but by regions, and we'll talk about that. But let's spend a couple of moments here on what we see on a statewide basis here, the overall position, if you will, of land values, non-irrigated, irrigated, pasture, and hay.
I think the most interesting thing when I was putting this together was looking at just the volume of sales and how that has decreased over the last 5 years. We kind of knew this was the case, but actually putting numbers to it made it very interesting to look at. So at the state level, in the last 5 years, we have seen a 30% decrease in the volume of sales. So if we took the average from 2013 to 2016 and compared that to last year in 2017, 30% less acres across the state sold.
That's a significant number, isn't it?
It is. And if you compare just 2013 to 2017, that's actually a 40% decrease in the volume of sales across the state. Now, this varies quite a bit by region, and as you get into the publication, you can see that. But a lot of our sales dropped, especially in Northwest, Northeast, East Central, Southeast. So it's very regional. Some in like Southwest and North Central hasn't decreased more than by 15% in sales volume. So there again, there's a lot of just regional trends. But just on an aggregate level at the state, we're seeing a lot less sales volume, which has definitely supported our land sales prices not decreasing because of the ag economy.
But the overall value of land has been slipping a bit, even though sales have been on the decline.
Yes. So definitely we're seeing some decline in the value of land per acre. So on the state level, if we break that out and look at the trends between non-irrigated crop ground, really across the 5 years from 2013 to 2017, we've seen a 22.8% decrease in sales, and it's been on a steady decline since 2013. When we're looking at irrigated crop ground, it's only started to decrease on average across the state in the last 2 years. And so over the 5 years, the change is only about 16%. From its peak 2 years ago, it's actually down almost 25%. Now, when looking at pasture and hay, this really peaked in about 2014 at about $1,800 an acre at the state level. That has since declined to about $1,400 per acre, so about a 22% decline at the state level. Now, if we look at this across regions, there's a huge variation again, just like sales volume. Yes. As you look across the state, specifically, let's look at non-irrigated crop ground, because that is the majority of our agricultural land across Kansas. Our biggest decrease we've seen is West Central. Their ground is actually down about 53% in value from 2013, starting at about $2,300 an acre, and in 2017 it was a little over $1,100 an acre. So that's where we've seen the biggest decline in agricultural land value. Now, there's some regions, say like Southeast, we've only seen a 0.6% decline since 2013. but they had a peak in 2016. So it's very differential between regions. And again, that's why we put out this publications, just so producers could have some more information at the local level as to the trends going on and not just looking at the state trend.
Let's expand on how you've done this region by region, in that you, again, look at land value by the type of land, whether it's irrigated, non-irrigated, or pasture and hay land. You also have land sale information by county, which is digging quite deep, actually.
Yes. So I talked about state trends, but we also broke it up into the 9 different crop reporting districts across the state. And from there, looked at the trends in the crop reporting district level and then got down to the county level. So everything that I've talked about trend-wise at the state level is also available regionally. So I'm just going to kind of use Northwest as an example here. Again, we looked at just the volume of sales that have changed. In each county, you can see the number of tracts that were sold in 2017, the total acres that were sold in 2017, and then how this compared to the average annual acres sold in the last 4 years. The Northwest region, we've seen some counties such as Norton, they sold 80% less acreage last year than they have on average from 2013 to 2016.
That's quite a drop.
Yes, that's a huge drop. But, in the whole region, they're, like I mentioned earlier, down almost 50%. So this region definitely has been hit hard as far as less sales volume and less value per acre. So and then by county, you can see the classification of the parcels that sold, how many acres of dryland crop and irrigated and pasture have sold. And then, as everybody wants to get to, what are the values per acre? So in Northwest region, you can see the different counties. They had to have at least 4 sales per county to be included in here. You'll see a weighted average per county and then the minimum and the maximum of those parcel sales. So that really gives you a good range of what are the values doing within your own county. And we break this up again by non-irrigated crop ground, pasture and hay, and irrigated crop ground if the sales allow.
Anybody with any degree of interest whatsoever in agricultural land values should take full advantage of using this outstanding resource, and it is available electronically, you say?
Yes, like I said, it's 57 pages long, so you might be able to go to your county office and have them print you off a copy. But it is available electronically on our website, agmanager.info, under the Land Buying and Valuing section.
And again, by title, it is the Kansas Agricultural Land Values and Trends, publication 2017, and it will be updated annually now that you've established this resource, Robin.
Yeah, so it's a little later in coming out this year since it was the first year, but we are hoping to get it out probably in the April timeframe in the coming years, but it will be an annual publication.
This is an excellent, excellent source, and we appreciate you coming over and telling us about it. Congratulations on putting this together, and looking forward to people making use of it. Thanks, Robin, for coming over.
Thank you, Eric.
Extension Associate in Agricultural Economics at K-State, and one of those largely responsible for pulling all the numbers together for this detailed report on Kansas agricultural land values and trends 2017. That's Robin Reid, agmanager.info. You'll find the publication in full for reviewing right there or for printing off, agmanager.info. And you're listening to Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today, coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University. Eric Atkinson here. Before we get into the agricultural news of the day, this reminder that you've still an opportunity to save your spot at that fine informational event being hosted next week by the Agricultural Economics Department at K-State, the annual Risk and Profit Conference, specifically on Thursday and Friday, the 16th and the 17th of August at the Alumni Center here on the campus. The theme this year, Markets and Government, Trade, Taxes, and Transition. The program gets going with registration at 10:30 on Thursday morning. And among the keynote speakers, Ambassador Richard Crowder will kick off this year's Risk and Profit Conference. He is from Virginia Tech University and served as the chief agricultural negotiator for the U.S. Trade Representative's Office in 2006 and 2007. Naturally, he'll be addressing current agricultural trade issues. He'll get it going again over the noon hour on Thursday. Also part of this program, the annual Conversation with a Kansas Farmer, and in the spotlight this year out of Shawnee County, Bob Hazelwood, soybean, corn, and wheat producer near Topeka. He'll be sharing his story and his views on the economics of the day in agricultural production. Once more, K-State's Dan O'Brien will be presenting his latest full and comprehensive grain market outlook, and his counterpart on the livestock side, Glenn Tonzer, with the cattle market outlook. Of course, all of those breakout sessions and much more making up this two-day conference. It's a great opportunity for you to brush up on contemporary topics in agricultural economics affecting you, and you can register right up to the event, but you get a break on registration if you do so by this coming Monday, August the 13th. To find out more about the program in full and to register online, go to agmanager.info, agmanager.info. Hope to see you at the 2018 Risk and Profit Conference here at Kansas State University, Thursday and Friday, August 16th and 17th at the Alumni Center here on the campus. The farm economy, speaking of which, throughout much of the plains weakened in the second quarter of 2018, along with a sharp decline in prices for farm commodities. This according to the new Kansas City Federal Reserve Quarterly Ag Credit Survey report. The Fed also reported credit conditions for farmers are deteriorating, and bankers are also seeing a modest rise in problems with loan repayment. That's also translating into a small rise in bankers declining loan applications. The 10th district, based in Kansas City, including Kansas, western Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Colorado, northern New Mexico, and Wyoming. The decline in farm income accelerated as crop prices fell in June. Bankers reporting a sharp decline in prices, especially for corn and soybeans. The district survey added that income is expected to remain subdued in the next 3 months, but that effect could be exacerbated, says the report, in states more heavily concentrated in commodities such as soybeans that have been targeted by retaliatory tariffs. The results in Oklahoma and mountain states, 35% of the respondents expecting income to be lower in the next quarter. In Nebraska and Missouri, which more heavily grow corn and soybeans, more than 50% of respondents to the survey expect farm income to fall in the next 3 months. Along with that, nearly 90% of the bankers in those states, Nebraska and Missouri, indicated weaker overall business activity as a result of the agricultural economies in their states. Demand for farm loans in the district remains high, but bankers expect loan demand to increase over the next quarter, as well as reflecting anticipated increases to operating loan balances through the end of the growing season. At the same time, the survey showed that the loan repayment rate is deteriorating slightly after improving in the last quarter of 2017, and the pace of loan renewals and extensions is gradually declining with banks as well. The Kansas wheat industry will once again be featured prominently at the 2018 Kansas State Fair. It's set for September the 7th through the 16th at the fairgrounds in Hutchinson. And you producers are encouraged to contribute to the presence of wheat at this year's State Fair. Marcia Boswell has more on this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop. Marcia?
There's nothing better than a little friendly competition, and the Kansas State Fair is the perfect statewide showcase for the fun results. Kansas Wheat sponsors several contests fit for the entire family. The Kansas Wheat Photography Contest is the perfect fit for those with a keen eye and a great camera. The contest includes photographs featuring all phases of the wheat industry. These color photographs will be used to promote Kansas as America's #1 wheat state, All Kansans, amateur and professional photographers, are invited to capture the story of Kansas wheat. According to Jordan Hildebrand, program assistant, we want to see photos that tell the story of Kansas wheat farmers. Whether it's beautiful landscapes or farm family fun, we want to share the wheat story with consumers around the world. What better way to do that than through photographs? For those who are handy in the kitchen and have a creative streak, the inaugural bread sculpture contest is the one for you. Kansas Wheat encourages participants to look beyond the loaf and shape bread in new and innovative ways. Whether you create cute-as-a-button bunny rolls, a regal turkey for Thanksgiving centerpiece, a literal bread basket, or a wintry snowflake, an imaginative and detailed product is a must. Creativity and originality are the top points in the competition's scorecard. Judges will also be looking for execution, visual impact, color palette, and finally, the completeness of provided instructions. Entries must include a typed, detailed recipe, including shaping instructions, with step-by-step photos or sketches on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. While there are no size restrictions, small entries such as rolls must be presented with 6 individual sculptures. For folks with nimble fingers and an artistic heart, wheat weaving may be for you. This division is made up of 11 classes, including beginner, corsages, wall hangings, freestanding, and holiday designs. Entrants are encouraged to show off their intricate creations made from picturesque amber waves of grain. Meeting the needs of customers is important to any business, and wheat farming is no exception. U.S. wheat is the world's most reliable choice. U.S. wheat producers offer the highest quality wheat in the world. The Kansas Market Wheat Show exists to educate Kansas wheat producers of all ages of the factors that they can control, to some extent, to grow high-quality wheat. All exhibits in the Market Wheat Show must contain 5 pounds of wheat grown by the exhibitor in the current year. Entry forms must be received by August 15th and can be submitted either online or by mail. Entries received after this date will be subject to late fees. Each contest has different receiving schedules. For these schedules and more information on these contests, please visit kansaswheat.org. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Thanks, Marcia. In a moment, Mary Knapp on Kansas agricultural weather on Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today, 800-321-3276, or visit us online, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. This Agriculture Today closes out on Kansas agricultural weather. Mike's side once more. Research and Extension climatologist Mary Knapp. She stops over from the Weather Data Library here at the university each Friday to talk with us. Well, let's get right to the drought monitor updated, Mary. And start with southwest Kansas. For a couple of years running, tough sledding down there, but the southwest is doing extraordinarily well now, comparatively speaking.
Right. It's been another summer of plentiful moisture in the southwest areas. They're running at about 1.25 times their normal growing season moisture, and so that has been very welcome. That has removed most of the even abnormally dry conditions in that region. We still do have a sliver of abnormally dry moving towards moderate along the Colorado border. As you move into eastern Colorado, they're faring not so well as southwestern Kansas, so they still have some drought impacts in that region. But you don't have to go very far, and you get into the central part. They're still facing moderate to severe drought. And then, of course, you get into eastern, particularly east central Kansas. The area of exceptional drought, which is the worst category for the drought, has expanded slightly. But the area of extreme drought has expanded even more, as has the area of severe drought. And again, that's not surprising given the rainfall differences in there. Here in Manhattan, we're about 13 inches behind for the year, and we are not the driest location in the area. I've heard discussions about areas in Shawnee County where it is the driest, if you want to call it water year, from August to July on record.
And when you look at the rainfall recap for this past week, well, northwest Kansas once again benefited, as did parts of the southwest, but it was extremely spotty elsewhere.
Right. The northwest and the west central divisions were both above normal for the first week in August. In contrast, you get down to the southeast division, and they averaged 0.23 of an inch, which is just over a quarter of what they would normally expect for the period. In contrast, Northwest Division averaged 0.89 of an inch, which is, again, more than they would typically expect during the week. And you could see as you moved into the east, most of the rainfall was in the form of pop-up thunderstorms that would rain in an area and collapse around. Again, looking in the Manhattan area, you could see all around us this huge towering cumulonimbus clouds, and we got a shift in the winds and not much else. I heard a couple of rumbles of thunder. Get over into Shawnee County, there were inch and a quarter rainfall amounts. Also worth noting that even with those areas that saw an inch in these driest, most drought-affected regions, that's not going to make major improvements. We need those kinds of rain to be more widespread and to continue for the rest of the summer and fall in order to get material relief, because an inch of rain barely wets the surface in some of these areas.
Well, at least on the temperature side, seemingly more manageable heat than what we've seen in recent weeks.
Right. Last week was much cooler than normal. The week ending on Tuesday, August 7th, was not quite as extremely cool, but it was still cooler than normal for most of the state. Statewide average temperatures were just a shade over 77 degrees, which is about a degree cooler than normal. In the eastern part of the state, where we did not benefit from the rains and the clouds, we were about a degree and a half warmer than normal, but only the east, central, and northeast did come a little bit above the normal on it. We did have temperatures hit the 100-degree mark, but we balanced that out with low temperatures that were down into the 40s and 50s. So, again, having that nighttime relief can do a really good job of offsetting those daytime highs.
It's a big development for our livestock producers out there, allowing their stock to cool overnight. So this weekend and next week, well, rain is apparently in the forecast, and the quantitative precipitation forecast, you say, shows some pretty good hope for the better part of Kansas.
Right. Most of Kansas has a good chance of seeing an inch or more. The areas that are not favored with quite so much are along the Nebraska border, but the further south you go, the greater the quantity that is expected to be wrung out of the systems as they go through. And there may be parts of south central, southeastern Kansas that see upwards of 3 inches of rainfall. Again, very welcome. Unfortunately, east central, where the most extreme drought is at, is likely to be in the inch to 2 inch range. We'll take it. It's not going to erase that, but it would certainly be welcome. You go further to our south, and particularly down towards the hill country in Texas, they may see as much as 10 inches of rain for the week. A lot of that moisture is coming from the remnants of Hurricane John, which is off Baja California now. Unfortunately, that track is looking to go to our south rather than a little bit further north where we could benefit more, but we'll take what they're predicting from it because it will certainly be closer to what we need to help alleviate some of the conditions in the eastern part of the state.
And that leads us to the El Nino watch, which appears more promising each time we talk about it, Mary.
Right. The conditions in the Pacific continue to be favoring the warmer than normal water along the equator, which is what classifies an El Nino. And they're already starting to see some of the upper-level atmospheric conditions that are El Nino-like, and that in particular is westerly winds. That helps steer where storm systems develop. It also tends to favor tearing apart tropical systems that would develop into hurricanes in the Atlantic. And so they've released an update on the Atlantic hurricane season where they're decreasing the number of forecasted storms. We particularly watch that El Nino pattern in Kansas because it tends to favor a wetter fall for us, and that certainly would be welcome.
And we'll keep tabs on that regularly right here when we get together each Friday. Mary, a good weekend to you. Thanks.
Same to you, Eric.
She's Mary Knapp, climatologist with K-State Research and Extension. Our time is away for today and for the week. We appreciate you tuning in. Please rejoin us right here on Monday, won't you? Until then, Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.